Have you ever wondered why some people seem to vanish into thin air whenever things get emotionally messy? Why certain individuals can appear warm and caring one moment, then become completely unreachable the next? If you've ever been close to an INFP, you've probably witnessed this mysterious disappearing act firsthand. One day they're sharing their deepest thoughts with you, and the next day, it's like trying to reach someone who's moved to another planet. Well, what you're seeing isn't rudeness or indifference. It's something far more complex and fascinating. INFPs, those rare dreamers who make up only about 4% of the population, have developed some of the most sophisticated emotional protection systems you'll ever encounter. These aren't your typical defense mechanisms. We're talking about intricate, almost invisible armor that's been carefully crafted over years of feeling everything far too deeply in a world that often doesn't understand sensitivity. Today, we're diving deep into the hidden world of INFP emotional protection. We're going to explore exactly how these complex individuals shield their tender hearts from a world that can feel overwhelming and harsh. Whether you're an INFP trying to understand your own patterns, or you're someone who loves an INFP and wants to understand why they sometimes seem to retreat behind invisible walls, this video is going to give you insights that will change everything. But here's what makes this really interesting. INFPs don't just have one or two defense mechanisms. They've developed an entire arsenal of emotional armor, each piece serving a specific purpose. Some of these protective strategies are so subtle that even the INFP themselves might not realize they're using them. Others are so powerful they can completely transform how others perceive them. I've spent years studying personality psychology and interviewing hundreds of INFPs about their inner world. What I discovered will surprise you. These seemingly fragile individuals are actually emotional survivors who've learned to navigate a complex world while preserving their authentic selves. They're not weak. They're strategic. So buckle up, because we're about to unpack the mystery of INFP emotional armor, piece by piece. The first thing you need to understand about INFPs is that their emotional protection doesn't look like what you'd expect. Most people think of emotional armor as becoming cold, distant, or aggressive. But INFPs are far more sophisticated than that. Their armor is designed to protect while still allowing them to remain true to their deeply held values of authenticity and connection. Let's start with the most fundamental piece of their emotional armor: the art of selective vulnerability. INFPs have mastered something that most people struggle with their entire lives. They can appear completely open and authentic, while actually revealing very little about their true inner state. It's like they've learned to show you their beautiful garden while keeping the greenhouse locked. When an INFP shares something personal with you, you might think you're seeing their whole heart. But what they're actually doing is offering you carefully curated glimpses of their inner world. They'll tell you about their dreams, their passions, their philosophical beliefs. They'll share stories that make you feel like you really know them. But the deepest fears, the raw wounds, the parts of themselves they're still healing, those remain safely protected behind layers of charming deflection and thoughtful redirection. This isn't deception. It's survival. INFPs have learned through experience that their deepest emotions are precious and fragile. They've probably been hurt by people who couldn't handle the intensity of their feelings, who made them feel like their sensitivity was a burden or a weakness. So they've developed this incredible ability to be genuinely intimate while still maintaining crucial boundaries. The second major component of INFP emotional armor is what I call the disappearing act. When life becomes too overwhelming, too demanding, or too emotionally chaotic, INFPs simply vanish. Not physically, necessarily, though that happens too. But emotionally, they retreat so far inward that they become unreachable. This isn't the dramatic door slam that INFJs are famous for. INFPs don't usually cut people off with finality and anger. Instead, they gradually fade away like morning mist. They'll stop responding to texts as quickly. They'll become harder to pin down for plans. They'll be physically present, but emotionally absent, giving you polite smiles and surface-level conversations while their real self has retreated to safety. What makes this so effective as armor is that most people don't even realize it's happening at first. The INFP maintains their gentle, agreeable exterior while their true self goes into hiding. They become masters of being present without actually being there. It's like talking to a beautifully crafted hologram of the person you thought you knew. This disappearing act serves multiple purposes. It gives the INFP time to process overwhelming emotions without having to explain or justify their need for space. It protects them from having to engage in conflicts or confrontations that feel threatening to their sensitive nature. And it allows them to maintain relationships without having to sacrifice their emotional well-being. But perhaps the most sophisticated piece of INFP emotional armor is their ability to redirect emotional energy through creative expression. While other personality types might argue, shut down, or lash out when they're hurt, INFPs have learned to transform their pain into something beautiful and meaningful. When an INFP is struggling emotionally, you might notice them suddenly becoming deeply absorbed in a creative project. They'll spend hours writing poetry, painting, composing music, or crafting stories. What looks like a hobby or artistic pursuit is actually an incredibly sophisticated form of emotional processing and protection. Through their creative work, INFPs can express feelings that are too complex or too intense to share directly. They can explore their deepest hurts, their greatest fears, and their most profound longings in a safe space where they have complete control over the narrative. The canvas, the page, the musical composition becomes a container for emotions that might otherwise overwhelm them or spill out in ways that leave them feeling exposed and vulnerable. This creative armor also serves another crucial function. It allows INFPs to communicate their inner world without having to risk direct emotional confrontation. They can write a story that captures exactly how they feel about a relationship conflict, or paint a picture that expresses their frustration with a situation without ever having to sit down and have a difficult conversation about it. The fourth major component of INFP emotional armor is their mastery of emotional camouflage. INFPs are incredibly skilled at reading the emotional temperature of a room and adjusting their own energy to blend in or deflect attention. If everyone around them is upbeat and energetic, they can match that energy even if they're feeling melancholy inside. If the group is serious and focused, they can become quietly thoughtful and supportive. This isn't people-pleasing in the traditional sense. It's more like emotional shape-shifting. INFPs understand instinctively that drawing attention to their own emotional needs or struggles often leads to unwanted scrutiny, advice, or pressure to change. So they've learned to hide their true emotional state behind whatever mask the situation requires. The genius of this armor is that it allows INFPs to move through social situations without triggering the kind of responses that make them feel uncomfortable or exposed. They can avoid the well-meaning but overwhelming concern of friends who want to fix them. They can sidestep the judgment of people who see sensitivity as weakness. And they can prevent themselves from becoming the center of attention when all they want is to observe and process quietly. But this emotional camouflage comes at a cost. The more skilled an INFP becomes at hiding their true feelings, the more isolated they can feel. They start to wonder if anyone really knows them at all, or if people only care about the carefully crafted version of themselves they present to the world. The fifth piece of INFP emotional armor might be the most misunderstood of all: their use of idealistic thinking as a shield against harsh realities. INFPs are natural dreamers and visionaries, but their idealism isn't just about hoping for a better world. It's also a sophisticated form of emotional protection. When reality becomes too painful, too disappointing, or too overwhelming, INFPs retreat into the realm of possibility. They focus on what could be rather than what is. They imagine better versions of the people who have hurt them. They envision scenarios where conflicts resolve peacefully and everyone understands each other perfectly. They construct elaborate mental worlds where their sensitivity is valued and their gentle nature is seen as a strength rather than a liability. This idealistic armor allows INFPs to maintain hope and compassion even in the face of repeated disappointments. Instead of becoming cynical or bitter, they protect their core optimism by focusing on potential rather than current reality. It's like they've learned to live simultaneously in the present and in a better future, drawing strength from the vision of what's possible while navigating the challenges of what's actual. This idealistic armor also manifests in how INFPs handle criticism and negative feedback. Instead of directly confronting harsh words or unfair treatment, they often reframe the situation in their minds. They might tell themselves that the person who hurt them was just having a bad day, or that they didn't really mean what they said, or that there's some deeper misunderstanding that could be resolved if only they could find the right words. While this might seem naive to others, it's actually a brilliant protective strategy. By maintaining their belief in people's fundamental goodness, INFPs avoid the crushing weight of cynicism that could destroy their naturally compassionate nature. They've learned that hope is more sustainable than bitterness, and that believing in redemption keeps their hearts open for the genuine connections they crave. The sixth component of INFP emotional armor is perhaps their most powerful weapon: the ability to create and retreat into rich inner worlds. When external reality becomes too harsh or demanding, INFPs don't just daydream. They construct elaborate mental landscapes complete with characters, storylines, and emotional experiences that provide everything their sensitive souls need. These inner worlds aren't escapism in the traditional sense. They're fully realized alternate realities where the INFP can be completely themselves without fear of judgment or rejection. In these mental sanctuaries, they can process difficult emotions, rehearse challenging conversations, and explore aspects of their personality that feel too vulnerable to express in real life. What makes this armor so effective is that it's completely invisible to others. An INFP can be sitting right next to you, nodding and smiling at appropriate moments, while their consciousness is actually miles away in a world where they feel safe and understood. They've mastered the art of being physically present while emotionally absent, giving their wounded hearts time to heal in the safety of their own imagination. These inner worlds also serve as laboratories for emotional growth. INFPs can experiment with different ways of handling conflicts, practice standing up for themselves, or explore what it would feel like to be completely accepted for who they are. It's like having a private rehearsal space for life's most challenging moments. The seventh piece of INFP emotional armor is their strategic use of physical retreat. When emotional overwhelm reaches a breaking point, INFPs have mastered the art of creating physical distance that allows them to regroup and rebuild their defenses. This might look like suddenly needing to go home early from social gatherings, taking long solitary walks, or finding reasons to spend extended periods alone in their rooms. But this isn't random antisocial behavior. It's calculated emotional self-preservation. INFPs have learned to recognize the early warning signs of emotional overload, the feeling of being drained by too much social interaction, the sense that their emotional boundaries are becoming permeable, the growing anxiety that comes from suppressing their true feelings for too long. When they feel these signals, they implement their retreat strategy with the precision of a military operation. They'll gracefully extract themselves from situations before they reach their breaking point, using polite excuses that don't hurt anyone's feelings while getting them the space they desperately need. During these retreats, INFPs engage in intensive emotional maintenance. They might journal extensively, listen to music that matches their inner emotional state, or engage in repetitive activities that help them process and organize their feelings. It's like they've created their own private emotional repair shop where they can tune up their sensitivity and prepare to face the world again. The eighth and perhaps most subtle form of INFP emotional armor is their mastery of emotional deflection through helping others. When an INFP is struggling with their own problems, they often become intensely focused on solving everyone else's issues. It's a brilliant strategy that serves multiple protective functions simultaneously. By channeling their emotional energy into caring for others, INFPs avoid having to sit with their own difficult feelings. They can maintain their self-image as caring, valuable people while avoiding the vulnerability that comes with admitting they need help themselves. And they can feel useful and needed, which provides a buffer against the depression and worthlessness that often threatens their sensitive hearts. This helping behavior also creates a kind of emotional insurance policy. When INFPs surround themselves with people who see them as caring and supportive, they build a network of goodwill that makes it less likely others will abandon them or treat them harshly. It's like they're making emotional deposits in relationship banks, creating reserves they can draw on when they inevitably need support themselves. But perhaps most importantly, focusing on others' problems allows INFPs to practice problem-solving and emotional processing skills in a low-stakes environment. They can work through complex emotional situations and develop wisdom and insight without having to risk their own vulnerable hearts in the process. The final piece of INFP emotional armor we need to understand is their sophisticated use of emotional compartmentalization. Unlike some personality types who struggle to separate different areas of their lives, INFPs have developed an almost supernatural ability to wall off painful experiences and continue functioning in other areas. They might be dealing with devastating heartbreak in their romantic life while maintaining perfect performance at work. They could be struggling with family conflicts while being completely present and supportive for their friends. This isn't denial or avoidance. It's strategic emotional management that allows them to prevent one area of pain from contaminating their entire existence. This compartmentalization armor works because it allows INFPs to maintain hope and functionality, even when part of their world is falling apart. They can preserve their capacity for joy and connection in relationships that are working while they heal from those that have caused them pain. It's like having emotional firewalls that prevent damage in one area from spreading throughout their entire system. What makes INFP emotional armor so remarkable is that it's designed not just for protection, but for preservation. Every strategy they've developed serves the ultimate goal of maintaining their authentic, caring nature in a world that often punishes sensitivity. They're not trying to become someone else. They're trying to remain themselves while staying emotionally intact. Understanding this armor is crucial for anyone who wants to build genuine relationships with INFPs. When you recognize their protective strategies, you can appreciate the incredible courage it takes for them to be vulnerable with you. You can see past their disappearing acts and emotional camouflage to the tender heart they're working so hard to protect. But there's something even more important we need to discuss about how this armor actually functions in real relationships, and what happens when INFPs finally feel safe enough to let their guard down. The dynamics of how they choose who gets past their defenses will surprise you. So there you have it, the intricate, beautiful, and sometimes heartbreaking world of INFP emotional armor. What we've uncovered isn't a story of weakness or dysfunction. It's the remarkable tale of how some of the most sensitive souls among us have learned to thrive in a world that doesn't always understand their gentle nature. These protective strategies, from selective vulnerability to creative expression, from idealistic thinking to strategic retreat, aren't flaws to be fixed. They're sophisticated survival mechanisms developed by people who feel everything deeply and refuse to let that sensitivity be crushed by harsh realities. If you're an INFP watching this, I hope you recognize the incredible strength and wisdom in your own protective patterns. Your armor isn't a sign that you're broken. It's proof that you're a survivor who's learned to preserve your authentic self while navigating a complex world. And if you love an INFP, remember this: when they share their inner world with you, when they let their guard down even slightly, you're witnessing something precious. Their armor isn't meant to keep you out forever. It's meant to keep them whole until they find people who can handle their beautiful, complex hearts with the care they deserve. The next time you see an INFP retreating into their protective shell, don't take it personally. Instead, appreciate the incredible emotional intelligence it takes to know when self-preservation is necessary. Because behind that armor is a heart capable of extraordinary love, creativity, and understanding. And that's worth protecting. Like, share, and subscribe if you felt this. And if you're an INFP, drop a in the comments to let the rest of us know you're watching.